Hey everybody, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. Spring might be just around the corner, but I don't think anyone's told Mother Nature yet because it is still freezing cold and super snowy out. But that does make it really good weather for big, bulky cowls. I'm really on a kick of these recently. They're beautiful, they're warm, they keep your neck and chest really cozy in that cold, blustery wind, and they're a fabulous fashion statement. One of the things that has become very popular in the yarn world recently are bulky weight yarns and self-striping yarns. You might even have some of those in your stash. What to do with them? Well, today we are going to turn one of them alongside a chunky, fluffy ball of yarn into this beautiful, great big, stretchy cowl that you can pull right up and over your head if it's that cold out, or roll it down and keep it under your chin. I just love this thing. We're going to talk more about yarn in the materials section, but it's a quick project and it's a lot of fun too, and you don't even need all of the yarn in those two balls. So it's technically a one skein project, except that you need two. Anyway, let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table and we will stitch up a yummy, bulky cowl together. Visit our shop and purchase a pattern. You'll help support our show. And we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below. In order to make our bulky cowls, we're going to use a bulky size 6 self-striping yarn and a 5 or a 6 either chunky or bulky weight soft fluffy yarn in a solid color running alongside. So I'm going to use Bernat Soft Boucle. This is a 140 gram ball alongside my self-striping Caron Chunky Cake today. But another nice yarn to be used in a project like this would be the Loops and Threads Country Loom. It's a size 6, it's very soft and fluffy, and they come in nice colors. I recommend that the solid color fluffy ball of yarn is either complementary or one of the colors that you find inside your self-striping ball of yarn. The Caron Chunky Cakes are considered a size 6. They're really big. This is 280 grams to start with. I have about 3/4 of this ball left from a previous project. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a large yarn needle with a big eye, and a really big hook to make nice loose stitches. This is a 15 millimeter crochet hook, also known as a P or a size 16 in the US. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, make sure you click the button and the bell so you never miss another episode. And once you've got all your supplies together, we can get started. This entire project is made holding both of your yarn's strands held together. So we are going to begin with a slip knot. And if you're not used to using 2 strands of yarn together, and certainly you're probably not used to using such a gigantic hook, remember to take your time. You may have to adjust the way you hold your hook or even your yarn in order to start getting a nice, consistent tension. So be patient with yourself, take your time, and do whatever you have to make this a nice, comfortable project. So if you have to slow down, go ahead and slow down. Remember to treat both of those strands of yarn as a single big strand, so you're always using both at the same time. And we're going to begin by chaining 26. So you want a foundation chain row of 26 chains. Once you've chained 26, your foundation chain row should be approximately 16 inches or 42 centimeters long. You're going to be trying and be careful not to twist your foundation chains as you work. So as you go, make sure that they continue to sit flat. If you have to, lay it down on your work surface to make sure that your foundation chain row doesn't twist on you. We're going to skip the first chain from the hook, find the second one, and single crochet into it. And like I said, this does take a little bit of getting used to working with such a gigantic hook and wrangling 2 strands of yarn at the same time. So just take your time. You're going to single crochet in each of those chains all the way back to the beginning, and at the end of row 1 you'll have 25 stitches. At the end of row 1 and every row in this project you will have 25 stitches. At the end of every row you will chain 1, turn your work, and for every row hereafter, we are only going to work the back loops of our stitches. So this is your turning chain, ignore that. Here's the first stitch we're going to use. Those are the top 2 loops that run across it. We are going to use the back loops only. So the back loop of the stitch is always the loop furthest away from you. Remember, this is still going to take a little getting used to. Once it gets bigger, it will be a little easier to manage, especially if you're working with it on your lap. So you're going to single crochet in each of those back loops only, all the way to the end of the row. You'll still have 25 stitches at the end of row 2, and I will catch up with you there. At the end of row 2, you should still have 25 stitches, and you should see a nice ridge kind of running across the front of it. That is the effect you get from working back loops only. And when you're working with big chunky yarn and a big hook, it is extra pronounced. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. At the end of every row, chain 1 turn. Continue to work the back loops only. So there's your turning chain. Find the back loop of the first stitch and single crochet. Single crochet into the back loops only of every single stitch in this row. When you get to the end, you'll still have 25 stitches. You're going to chain 1 and turn, and you're going to work another 20 rows. So we just finished row 2. You're going to work another 20 rows, and then we're going to lay it flat, measure it, and from this point onwards, you can decide how wide you want your cowl to be. After you've worked 22 rows of working single crochet into the back loops only of each row, you should have something that looks like this. A nice, thick, ridgy fabric. You want to stop at this point, grab your measuring tape and measure it. So 22 rows on my cowl so far, without stretching it, is 13.5 inches or 34 or 35 centimeters. You want to get a cowl that is approximately 24 inches wide, or if you were to use the centimeters, 61 centimeters. So you want to add another 18 rows if you've got the same measurement I do. Now, of course, you can decide if you want to make your cowl really, really wide, in which case you can keep adding rows, or if you want to stick to the 24-inch width, which, remember, this is very stretchy fabric, so you don't need it to be too big. If you want to stick to the 24, somewhere around there, inch width, then you want to add another 18 rows, or however many rows you need in order to get to that width. So keep your measuring tape handy as you continue to add rows here throughout the rest of the cowl build. Keep measuring it, and once you get to a 24-inch or 60 centimeter width, pause, and I'll catch up with you there. Once your cowl has reached 24 inches or 60 centimeters, we're going to work one more row, and that's the seam row. When you get to the end of your last row, you're going to chain 1 and bring the other short end, so the beginning row of foundation chains, up to meet your last row. We're going to slip stitch through each set of stitches. So we're still using 2 strands of yarn held together, and we're also still using the back loops only of our last row, but we're going to be using the corresponding chain stitch of the foundation chain row. So it looks something like this. Pick up the back loop of the last row and poke your hook through the first chain of the corresponding chains in your foundation chain row. Slip stitch. Try to keep those slip stitches nice and loose because you don't want to create a tight seam. Pick up the back loop of the next stitch and the corresponding chain on the foundation chain row and slip stitch. You probably have found that your cowl is pretty heavy at this point, so if it helps, you might want to work on a surface or on your lap, and just take your time as you work your way down that seam. You'll still have 25 stitches at the end of this row. They will be slip stitches, and if you keep your stitches nice and loose, you're going to get a nice easy seam, and that pretty ridge that's created will just add to the ridge effect of the overall texture of our big chunky cowl. When you've finished working all 25 of those slip stitches and your seam is finished, all you have to do is snip your yarn, fasten off. And then take your yarn needle, and with both strands still held together, remember we're treating them as though they were one piece of yarn, you're going to thread up your tails in your yarn needle and then weave them into the rest of the cowl. So try and keep them together, and then pick some stitches. You can work them through this side and flip it inside out, or if you like the other side better, flip it inside out first and then do the stitching, or I should say then weave in your tails. Just find some stitches. You're going to weave them in first going in one direction and then going in another direction, back over top of your stitches, just to make sure that those two little tails don't come undone. And once you've woven your tails in and they've disappeared, you're all done. And now your cowl is ready to wear. It's like being inside your very own blanket. I hope you had fun making this big, bulky cowl along with us today, and we will see you soon on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, stay cozy, and have an awesome week, everybody. Bye!